Welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. This is a show that we used many years ago to kind of talk about some of the financial problems that each community was dealing with and looking at prior to their respective town meetings. And upon suggestion by some residents in both communities that we utilize this program again, we are back. We recently did a conversation with Kathleen Otina and Justin Evans from Whitman, talking about their situation. Today, we are speaking with Lisa Green, who is the Hanson Town Administrator. Welcome.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
And we have Eric Kinsherf.
Exactly.
Kinsherf.
Yeah, thank
you. And Eric is the Town Accountant.
Correct.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for taking your time to sit and talk about this. Now, this program is going to be, traditionally we try to have our shows be about 30 minutes. This one might go a little longer. It might go 40, 45, depending on how the conversation goes and the dissemination of information that we're able to share with the folks who are tuned into this particular program. Reason why we're having this conversation, because the town of Hanson this year is seeking a $3 million override. Mm-hmm. Last year, Hanson voters defeated a $372,000 request. Let's kind of talk a little bit about the town finances and where things are at this particular time compared to last year. You want to start, Lisa?
Yeah, so Kevin, again, thank you for having us sit with you today. So the town of Hanson is, we are seeking a $3 million override. It will be on the town meeting warrant, be at town meeting. There is a question on the ballot already because the ballots need to be printed. So depending on what town meeting does, we'll then move to the ballot to see if the ballot question is going to be recognized or not recognized. As we know, costs have been going up over the years. Gasoline costs, insurance costs, medical insurance, liability, vehicle insurance, employee costs, staffing costs. Costs have increased over the years. The cost of educating our children has gone up, and all of these costs have increased. And this is a main reason why the town is looking for a $3 million override. But to go over the exact figures, I will turn that over to our town accountant, Eric Kinsherf.
Okay, so Kevin, to put it simply, the town has limited amount of revenue that it can raise, so it's basically like over the years, like maybe like 3%, but the expenses go at 5 to 6%.
Right.
So you can see where the problem is there. So over the past couple of years, what the town of Hanson has had to do to meet this is they had to use some of their reserves, what's called like free cash, retained earnings, to supplement the budget. So this whole thing was kind of foreshadowed. Like every year we say, hey, this isn't the best case scenario, but we have to balance the budget, so we're going to use free cash, but it's going to affect you down the road. So then the next year, we had to use a little bit more. And last year what we did was we tried to balance the budget proportionately, but each department took a proportional cut, but we needed the schools, they went over and above like the 5%. We asked them, can you make it 5% so it would fit into our forecast? And they couldn't fit in, so it was like 7%. So as a town, we said, all right, we can fund the 5% increase in the schools within our operating budget, but the extra money, we're going to need an override for it. So hence, last year, that's what that $372,000 was. Okay. It was basically just the extra money that took the schools
from 5% to 7,
8%, and that's all it was. So we thought that was fair. So what happened was, when that failed, the schools did not reduce the assessment by $372,000. They just said, hey, you're stuck with it. So what we had to do at town meeting, it was kind of like a tumultuous town meeting. We had to use one-time sources of revenue. We had to make some reductions, not fill some positions. We took all the hits on the town side. So that brings us to this year. So this year, basically, we knew that there was going to be issues with the budget this year, because the past 2 years we've been saying it. We can't, rely on these one-time sources. The costs are going. So all the override requests came in, and we were probably about $2.6 million short. Now, the fire department also wanted a separate override question to put on 4 new firefighters, like a new shift.
One per shift, right?
One per shift. Was that what it is? Yeah, because I'm not sure what the details are.
Right.
But so the idea was, instead of having one override to maintain services and one for the additional services, the town's, fathers and people decided to say, hey, let's just roll it into one override, so we don't have here's $344,000 for new firefighters. This is $2.6 million to keep things the way they're going. So that's why it's a $3 million override this year.
So it's a combination between the school's annual assessment and the fire department, and probably anything else in regards to the municipal government, the town hall employees.
Operations, yes.
A lot of your costs have increased. I think everybody's costs have increased incrementally,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my thought is this $3 million override would put the town in some great financial shape. It's not just an override to say, hey, we're just maintaining what we have and we might be back next year, but this is an override that would actually allow the hiring of $344,000, 4 firefighters. You can tell I'm an accountant. I didn't say 4 firefighters, I said 344,000. So it's going to,
yeah.
Salaries.
Yeah, it does, allow the hiring additional 4 firefighters. It would, we're going to have to use $1 million of free cash to fund a budget if the override doesn't pass. If this override passes, we won't have to use any free cash to maintain our operating budget, which will help with our bond rating and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, as far as averting reductions, the $3 million will allow us to avert the following reductions. If the override doesn't pass, we'd have to ask Whitman Hanson to reduce our assessment by $940,000, and said, well, how did you figure that? Well, basically what we did is we took the school's percentage of the budget as a percentage of the shortfall, and we made each, not department, but each function, like general government, public safety, take 5% reductions. And when I read these off, you'll see what the reductions are going to be if the override doesn't pass. So so $940,000 for the schools, so we would expect our assessment to decrease by that. That's a big question mark. Would have to eliminate, in our current budget, we have $130,000 for a facilities manager and IT support, which is very important, but when budgets are tight, we're not going to be able to afford to do that. We're going to have to actually eliminate 1 full-time police officer, 1 full-time firefighter. So not only not having an additional 4, we're going to have to actually reduce 1 in each department. So that's why we need, one of the reasons we need the override. There's $216,000, and there's 3 police cruisers that are in a budget that will have to be deferred if the override doesn't pass. There's $73,000 in the highway department. It's going to eliminate a laborer there. They just recently got to full staffing. So the effects of these, I'm just talking about the numbers, but there's real effects to all these reductions that, the police chief and the fire chief and the highway director will explain in more detail. Then we have a $27,000 reduction in the transfer station hours, and then $49,000 in health, COA, library, and parks and fields. So if the override doesn't pass, if the override passes $3 million, the Hanson's going to be in great financial shape. If it doesn't pass, we're going to have to make these cuts. So not only is it going to be a little tough this year, it's definitely, we're still using one-time sources. It's going to be even worse next year. So my thought is, with this one override, it'll put Hanson in great financial shape for the next 3 to 4 years. Mm-hmm. So now, as a resident, how is this going to affect me? That's
No, don't jump ahead now.
All right, sorry.
You're answering all 6 of my questions.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Let me ask the question.
Sorry.
You can kind of run the gambit as I answer.
apologize.
Because I want to have Lisa kind of get her input on some of this.
Sure.
Knowing that last year at this time, when I was having conversations with you after town meeting and then after the town election, this year, of course, town election is on May 17th, and if it passes town meeting, it has to this show will still be relevant because the hope is that people will continue to be educated when they go to the polls on Saturday, May 17th. I believe you had to deal with Town Hall at being operating at reduced staffing.
Yes, we did.
What
yes,
was
we
that
did.
like?
So we, as a result of the override failing last year, we had to reduce all of the administrative professional staff by 1 hour. And that was an agreement that we had made with the union on that. And then we had 2 department heads, Conservation and Board of Health. The Conservation agent and the Board of Health agent, also their hours were reduced by almost 10 hours. So what it did was it caused those departments to be closed less hours. And we had a lot of angry people who came into our office wondering why those 2 departments were not open. We had people who wanted to get their transfer station stickers, they wanted to get their septic designs, things like that, and they had to wait for that, and we had to explain this is the budget that town meeting voted, and these are the reductions that needed to happen. And the transfer station was closed 1 day a week. And again, we had angry calls from people saying, why is the transfer station closed? And we said, because town meeting voted to reduce those services for the transfer station. And if, the reductions are even higher this year, there's going to be a lot more departments that are not open as much as they usually are. So we will have residents who will be angry about the reduction in the services.
Now, have you reminded folks since putting together this budget, or this budget has been put together, that remember what happened last year, this is something that could be further impacted? And what are you getting for a response?
We do say that, and there's really no response to it. I don't know if people are not really realizing what we're saying, because sometimes you don't really experience it until it's not there. So right now, the health department is open, but when they come in after town meeting and it is closed, then they'll say, why is it closed? Right. So a lot of people right now, they're not feeling any of those impacts. So it's hard for them to imagine the future when it is impacted. So
a question for both of you, local aid, how is the state either been a cause for what we're going through? I mean, what does the state annually provide to the town of Hanson? Local aid, Chapter 70 money, Chapter 90, or any additional funding that would help your fiscal year budget?
Well, Kevin, I'm glad you called this show By the Numbers. So for the state aid is actually only 6% of our whole budget. So 85% is the taxes. 6% is local aid and 9% is local receipts. So what we're projecting out for next year, the state gave us $1.8 million in total state aid last year, and this year we're projecting out $2 million, which is like a $161,000 increase, which is actually like an 8% increase in the state money that we're getting this year. Okay, now this is just the town side of the government. The schools, actually, we don't really get too much Chapter 70 directly. We get like $40,000. The schools get all the Chapter 70 money for Whitman and Hanson directly to them. And so when they build their budget, they have their budget, and they say, all right, we can count on this Chapter 70 money, and we're going to assess the towns the difference. So that does have an effect on our assessment, because my understanding is what the state's given the schools is nominal, like, I don't know what the percentage is, but I want to say 1 or 2% or whatever.
It's a formula.
Yeah, it's a formula. And so what happens is in the formula is they have a budget that says it goes up 5%, but if they only could count on an extra 1% from the state, where's the rest of the money coming from?
Right.
The town's assessments.
Taxpayers, yeah.
So that's how that all plays into effect. So what they think is this state aid formula for the schools, which it comes down to us in our assessment. Basically, what they're saying for Hanson is, like, in our opinion, Hanson residents are paying enough on their property taxes towards the schools. Like, in essence, that's whether it's true or not, but that's what the formula says. So they hold us harmless. They don't cut our state aid, but they just level fund it. But it does have an effect.
But it was a few years ago, wasn't there kind of a conversation in the regional sense as to how the funding was, and I think it moved to a different method from previously? How has that affected the town? Because isn't it currently like a statutory method as opposed to what it was previously?
Right. So I believe it was 1993. The state, they had an Education Reform Act where the preferred method of assessing education to towns that are within a regional district, they call it the statutory method, which is a different formula than what the towns were. We had been doing it on an alternative method as per an agreement with the two towns. And the alternative method was per pupil.
Right.
So Whitman was responsible for 60%, Hanson 40% by per pupil enrollment. So they left that behind and moved to the statutory, which is now on a different formula. And that did cause Hanson to increase the amount that they pay. And because Hanson is deemed the wealthier town, Hanson does end up paying more. And there is a simple way to describe that. Whitman has more students, so Whitman pays more towards school. Hanson has less students, so Hanson pays a little less. Therefore, we are the wealthier town, but as the wealthier town, the formula says we pay more.
Yep.
So it's a simple way to explain it, but it's still complex as far as the formulas.
And as far as complexity goes, just say there was 100 students total, 40 from Hanson, 60 from Whitman. So you would think you'd split the cost 40%, 60%, but
I think that's the way it was previously.
yeah,
wasn't it?
That was the alternative
the
method.
complexity is, that was the old method, but the new method's more complex. The state says, well, Hanson's a little bit more wealthy, so even though you have 40% of the students, you're going to pay 45% of the cost, and so that's how it goes.
Okay. You had alluded to earlier as to what the impact was going to be for the average homeowner, their tax bills. What are those estimated numbers, Eric?
Okay, so basically on the town's website, hansonbudget.com, there is a calculator. You put in your assessed value. So I put in the average assessed value for the town of Hanson for next year, which is $515,000, and the total monthly cost was $61.91 a month, and the average annual cost was $742.92. So if I'm a homeowner and I'm paying a mortgage, in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, if I get the taxes taken out on my mortgage payment, rounding up, I'm saying my payment could increase $100 a month, because even though it's overestimating, but and then if I'm a person that pays my taxes quarterly when the bills come out, I'm paying, it's probably going to be an extra $200 a quarter, like in round numbers. So that's how it's going to affect the bottom line when a person gets their tax bill. They're going to see an increase if the override passes.
Okay. So in layman's terms, if the override passes, the town will prioritize that new funding with not only the new firefighters, and will also preserve cutting one of the firefighters.
Correct.
Yes.
In essence, it would be 5 firefighters if you're doing some simple math here. And then you'll be able to meet what the town's assessment is for the schools.
Yes.
Correct.
And what else? Is there anything else that this will also make sure it takes care of? Does it enhance town hall? Does it brings back, I think you said, you get to hire, or you maintain someone who's going to oversee your IT services.
And even the biggest assets the town has, right? It's all its buildings and properties. We don't have an official facilities manager.
Someone who can take care of that stuff.
This override would fund that position. So we'd have somebody overseeing all the facilities.
Right.
I mean, in the long run, that could save a lot of money. But so that's part of it. Then the other thing is that, deferring the purchase of 3 police cruisers, it's easy. We do what you have to do to balance the budget.
Sure.
But it'd be nice to have a nice rotation, have fresh vehicles in and so forth. So that's like the main things are, it allows us to retain and enhance the public safety, police and firefighters. It allows us to meet what the school is asking the town's assessment is, and it'll actually help with the booster up our IT. What's more important than cybersecurity and this these days?
Today's world, absolutely. Yeah.
Today's world.
Because today's world is you're going to have to do more with less, and how do you do that? Through technology. So I think IT investments are good.
And I feel as though you had mentioned how a lot of residents were upset that last year that there were certain departments that were shuttered and weren't. But I think these days, if you work with less, then it's expected all the time, and then it's going to be a point where you're not going to be able to meet those services, that you're not going to be able to constantly meet those requests. So,
Correct.
I mean, we're trying the best we can every year. Like I always make a joke about the MacGyver, like budgets like a thumbtack. I mean, that's basically what we've been doing. And even the budget without an override has a lot of components of that. Like if the override doesn't pass, we're going to do the best that we can to maintain as much as we can. But like I said, it's not sustainable. Like if the override doesn't pass, there'll be cuts next year, and there'll be even further cuts the year after.
So is it safe to say that eventually, let's say the town decides that it does not want to pass this, there's going to come a time that the community is going to have to invest in an override? Is that accurate to say, or not so much? It depends on what happens on next year's receipts.
Right.
I think it is safe to say they would, but not if they don't, then you're going to have reduced firefighter. I mean, they might be passing out first aid kits instead of calling the ambulance. It's that type of thing. It's just a zero-sum game. To maintain the level of services,
Sure.
Yes, you would definitely need an override next year. No doubt about it.
You going to chime in?
Well, I was going to say that, staffing is critical. We are already operating on a bare bones staffing. So to cut staffing in departments of only 2 leaves only 1. And usually, if it's the department head, people are going to have to get used to waiting longer for their building permits, waiting longer for inspections, waiting longer for, a ZBA meeting, and they're going to have to wait. If we have to close the transfer station, people who use the transfer station will then need to contract with a vendor to remove their trash. And if you look at the costs of what it is to contract with a waste management company to come and pick up your trash, if you weigh the cost of that to what your tax would increase, you're going to pay almost the same amount. If our library has to close, if our senior center has to close, those are resources and critical services that families rely on, that our elderly rely on. Those services go away. Tomorrow you can't say, I didn't realize that was going to happen, and just, reopen it all. It's almost you start from the very beginning. So people need to decide what type of community that they want Hanson to be, and this is how they're going to do that. Because when you decide you have a community that you don't want to invest in your library or your counseling on aging or into your infrastructure, that drops your property values. Yep. So people need to consider that as well. Yep. There's so many different avenues to this that really we're just asking people to really think about the impacts of an override and what it means to not vote for it or to vote for it. A lot of things to think about.
And Lisa, all the direct services that you mentioned, really important. But there's another thing that I want to mention as well. Like sometimes you think treasurer collector's office or accountant, but say the treasurer collector's office, you cut that staffing. So there's the main they have to collect the money, put it in a bank, reconcile, but if they don't have enough staffing, they're not able to do the extra things, is like proactively manage the town's cash. Like our treasurer last year proactively manages it. Like our investment income went up like $110,000 because she has time to do it. Also, it takes time to actually go be aggressive and actually collect taxes at free cash. But if you're on a bare bones budget, you just have enough staff just to collect money and do this. You don't get to do those things. So that has to be taken into consideration too. So you're allowed to be more proactive. If not, we'll have like a reactive government instead of a proactive government.
Mm-hmm. I think you've probably outlined it, but it bears repeating here. what has been explored for alternatives to a full $3 million override, whether it's phasing out requests, capital exclusions, or other financial strategies. And again, this is for folks who are tuning in at home who are like, oh, boy, have they thought of this? Your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts are that we already have an alternative budget if the override doesn't pass, and we just outlined right there there's going to be staff reductions, use of one-time sources of revenue, and the key is something that we don't have control over. If what happens, like if say our non-override budget is based upon the schools reducing their budget, our assessment to $940,000. They don't have to do that. If they stick to the guns and say, no, we're going to charge you the same amount, we have to find an additional $940,000, and that's going to be devastating. So there's a lot of factors here. So just wanted to mention that.
Okay. Let's talk about a survey that the town circulated about the override. What did you get for a response as far as numbers? I know that there's a pending conversation about the results, so we're not talking about that. We're just talking about what have you was it a survey that was welcomed?
Yes, it was actually. So just to give a little background on it, we had partnered with Bridgewater State University, the public administration, basically graduate studies program, and so they put together these questions. And they had distributed the survey through electronic means. We had paper copies for people, and they did this all free of charge as a partnership. And they had over 500 responses, which is excellent. So they have tabulated and put together the results, which they will be at the select board meeting this evening to provide the results of the survey.
Talk to me about anybody who has approached you since the conversation has been broached about seeking a $3 million override. What are residents, when they cut, are you met with split decision? You have some that come up and go, why do we have to do this? Or some who are like, oh, well, I hope it passes. I don't want to see us I want to see our fire department to be at full staff and be at the ready, especially if there's an emergency. So
the forums that we've held 2 informational forums. Both were well received. I've received very positive feedback from the people who attended the forum that the information that we provided was excellent information. There was some information in there they didn't realize that made them think of things differently. The resources that we've put together with our Hanson Budget Override, the hansonbudget.com website, which has a lot of information for folks to look at. It's been met with positive feedback. And we have one more forum that will be held tomorrow at the Hanson Middle School at 6:30 in the auditorium. So that information, I have had residents that have come to me that said, geez, I didn't realize this. Can you talk with me a little bit more about this? I just need more information. So it's been very positive. And if there are people out there that still have questions or they're still confused about the information, not really quite sure, and they want to be fully informed, again, we've got a lot of resources out there that are providing all the information to people so that they can be informed on the decision they make.
So I would ask you both this, so you get your response, and how do you feel that the town has been working to build transparency, whether it's with the website, whether it's with these forums, so that they will be able to trust how the new funds are going to be spent and that the town is doing right by them and their tax dollars?
My take on everything is that we are transparent with our budget. We have as much information on our website as possible. If people have trouble finding it, they can always call the office and ask me where it is. Where do I find this information? Can I come in and look at the budget? We want everything to be transparent. And the budget that we are going to present at town meeting is going to show people exactly how much is going to go to each department. We've done everything possible to make this as transparent as possible of where all the funds from the override is going to go.
In my view, as far as like the process, like the past couple of years and this year, it's like night and day. Because of Lisa was able to procure that hansonbudget.com, build that website, but I'm feeling like this year is the most, everything's out there. 3 forums. Like last year, we had no forums like for the override. We just had the select boards meeting. I think it's all out there, and I think where it gets out, I hear people in the audience say, "Oh, my neighbor didn't know about it, but I told him about the forum," and so forth. So the way I look at it is, all the information's out there, and like you've heard the term, Kevin, like light acts as a disinfectant. It's all out there. Let the light shine on it, and see where we go, see what happens.
Well, it's best for residents, if you're not sure, I mean, there are select board meetings, there are school committee meetings, and they're all provided by Whitman Hanson Community Access if you just visit our website to find out more. And as to, I know that there's been work to break up the different channels when it comes to the YouTube channel. Again, go to the website or call 781-447-4175 if you have any questions in regards to finding materials on the YouTube channel in regards to meetings. And those meetings, again, play on the government channel here at WHCA. The thing I'm going to ask you, Eric, is how does this override fit into the town's long-term financial planning when it comes to should residents, if it passes, expect any future overrides or override requests in the coming years?
The only override request that I would see down the pike is for the South Shore Vocational Technical High School, because that payment might go up to $1.2 million a year. So the only override request would be just to pay for the debt on that South Shore Voc Tech school. That's the only one that I see within like 3 to 4 years. And the long-term financial plan, if this passes, we'll be able to actually have a source of revenue for our capital funds, because we won't be using any free cash. So it fits very nicely. And I would say I wouldn't expect an override request for like 3 years other than the debt exclusion for the new South Shore Vocational Technical High School.
Okay. And I believe with that also, and it's the way Dr. Tom Hickey, who's a Hanson resident, it's worth noting that he's the superintendent director of South Shore Technical, but that it isn't a locked-in number for communities, that there's kind of, isn't there kind of like a sliding scale?
He's great. He's working, even though they voted debt exclusion, he has it in his mind how to mitigate the effect by doing some, like, I'll say, call them county gymnastics on the school level. So when it comes flying down at our level, it'll mitigate. So maybe I mentioned it, $1.2 million the first year, but Tom is focused on kind of smoothing those impacts over to make it less impactful on Hanson as he can.
And it depends on the number of students that are attending as well, right?
Ratios,
Correct.
all these,
Yes.
that's complex. So we use that as a high watermark, but no. Yeah.
Okay. What message would you each like to send to the voters who may be skeptical about supporting such a tax increase? Lisa?
Just please come out, watch the forum information, check out the website, www.hansonbudget.com. It has all kinds of information, and if you are still unsure, still need some more information, come into Town Hall and talk with us. That's all I can say, that, think of what type of community you want Hanson to be.
And I would say it's like a binary choice. I mean, if you vote for the override, your tax bill will go up, but you put your town in a pretty good financial position. And if you don't vote for the override, your tax bill won't go up as much; it'll be lower. But then you're going to see some effects on your town government that may not be the greatest.
Now, how often do you have residents approach either your office or your department asking about what is the town doing in regards to economic development and bringing in businesses? Again, I know it's more residential. I think it's 91% residential, and 8 to 9% it is business. But adding more businesses, does that help with the tax base?
It will always help with the tax base, because you're bringing in a company that will pay property taxes, personal property taxes. They bring employees, which may be some Hanson residents, and we are always working towards. We have an economic development committee that is very active in the business community. We're using grants to make 2 lots of land that the town owns site ready for businesses, and so we are doing everything that we can to attract business to Hanson.
And Kevin, like in next year's budget, we talked with the assessor, and they actually have $400,000 in new growth, like new new growth, new tax revenue next year as a result of development, probably not commercial, but there's projects in town, so it's not like a stagnant thing. So we're, with that extra new growth, that well, still brings us to like 3.73% in new taxes, but there's effects on that end. But yeah, obviously, if they put a prime distribution center, that's going to save people a lot of money.
Well, and I'm going to ask something that's more or less on a national level, with knowing that with the new administration, a little bit more than 100 days in office, and imposing tariffs, does that hurt any kind of growth or any building in the community? And is that something that you're aware of in regards to, future spending and future budgets?
Well, we know it's coming. We know the tariffs are going to trickle down to the states and to the municipal governments. Of course, we don't know what the hit is going to be yet, but it will probably. It'll hit us in the next probably 6 months to 12 months. Yeah. We're waiting to see as far as the funding to the states. Where that's going to hit, because the state, there's not going to be anywhere else they can turn but to the residents of the state to help with making up the difference that they're losing in any kind of federal funds. So those are definitely things that we are watching closely and paying very close attention to.
Okay. And I would say just like two things in regards to the tariffs and so forth. One is on the municipal budget, things are going to cost more, because if you have tariffs, if we have to new police cruisers, new this and that, so that's going to put a strain on our operating budget. And the other thing is more, if I look on my 401k and it's lost like 20%, then psychologically I'm going to say, geez, I don't know if I want to go out to dinner. So that's just like anecdotal evidence. So in my mind, that's kind of the two-pronged effect, the personal effect and then the town effect.
Okay. Probably one of the last questions that I'll ask is telling folks how important it is you can go to town meeting and vote for this, but the job isn't done, is it?
No.
No. They have to make sure that they mark May 17th.
May 17th as well. So we're having town meeting at the high school auditorium. We want to make sure we have enough room for everybody who wants to attend. So just want to remind people of that. Come to the high school, come to town meeting, and then please come out and vote. May 5, Monday, May 5 is the town meeting, and then Saturday, May 17 is the town election. So please come out and be engaged in your community.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for this venue. This is good to be able to vet out some of the stuff, and appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anything I haven't asked you, any questions that haven't been asked but you feel is important to share with the viewers of WHCA?
No, I think we've said, come to the forums, visit the website. We do have we have our department heads, our police chief, our fire chief, library director, COA director, highway director. We have them all come to the forums to talk about the impacts of their departments and how the reduction in services will impact people with plowing and police and fire and things like that. So very, very big decisions for people to make in the next coming weeks.
So the decision is consequential. I hope we got that point across. And second thing is, there's a lot of information out there to help you as a voter to make your own decision.
Yeah, what's the website again?
www.hansonbudget.com.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you both for coming in and being a guest on the show that we've brought back By the Numbers to share information with folks. And we want to thank you for tuning into a program like this. Again, the idea is to have you better informed as a voter. Not tell you what I'm here just to kind of be the facilitator of the information, but so you're a better educated voter when you go to town meeting and then when you go to the town elections on May 17th. Well, until our next conversation, have yourself a great day.